And our supreme champion female is our national champion, Charlotte. I feel the power of Tim Bullock.
Entry number 80, our grand champion, Pulled Hereford Bull from Agribition. One show in grand champion, one show in supreme.
She's not just a lady for the day, she's lady for life. Wheatland lady, 211 H, and Wheatland Bull, 4177 M. Entry number 37.
Well, welcome everybody to episode 6 of the Next Gen Cattle Podcast. We're super excited this week to have Riley and Maddy Lafrentz on. It's definitely kind of a couple that I've wanted to have on since the beginning, so we're really happy to have you guys on.
Thank you, Mitch. Appreciate the opportunity.
Riley, maybe just touch on the history of Wheatland and where it got started.
Yeah, you bet. Obviously involved here with my parents, Vern and Denise. They would have started this a long time ago, back in the early 90s, when they got married and had a handful of purebred Simmental cows at that time. That was a time when there was a lot of change in the breed as far as, frame size, full blood versus red and blacks, at that time just becoming a little more prominent or starting to kind of take place. So there was a lot going on at that time. Actually, my dad's family grew up. Him and his father and brother and mother started registering Simmental cattle. I was actually talking to my dad last night about it, but in 1971, that was the first year that they would have registered some full-blood cattle, and they had actually imported 3 full-bloods, females from Switzerland. And those females come 3 consecutive years, 71, 72, and 73. And just kind of a little side note, it was kind of interesting. The first cow that come over from Switzerland in 1971, her first bull calf was a calf at that time was quite impressive, and they'd actually named him Wheatland Double Extra 4F, and that bull actually was the first Agribition champion bull. That would have been the first year that they had Agribition, and Double Extra 4F was champion bull that year at Regina. So yeah, they seen a lot of change, obviously, in the type of cattle there over the years. Into the early 90s, started to put more of a focus. My mom and dad always enjoyed the red and black deal. That was a little more, kind of their type and kind and where we were wanting to go. A little bit, actually, when we first started, my dad worked off the farm at a coal mine. He'd actually left a family farm there that he was involved with, met my mom. My mom grew up just south of Weyburn on a commercial operation, was in 4-H. They showed some cattle at Agribition, was very involved and had a passion for cattle. So then they'd obviously got married. My dad worked off the farm at a coal mine. They just had a handful of red and black purebreds at that time. Obviously, I have a brother, Cody, that would be a year younger than me. Both very involved. He's actually now obviously in Oklahoma, married, kind of focusing on the show heifer deal. So yeah, family operation. And, we first started, the numbers were quite small. Back when I was very young, there was just a handful of cows, kicking around, and sold some bulls, private treaty. Started showing more and more as we got into the early 2000s is when things really started to kind of ramp up, and showed very competitively for about, especially at Agribition. That was kind of always the one that, being kind of in our back door, that was the one that we kind of focused on. And there would have been a spell there for, probably 15 to 18 years. In that window, we would have, taken about 12 to 16 head a year, with some Simmentals. And then later on towards the end, we, had some Angus cattle there. And so, yeah, did a lot of showing. And now we're actually kind of at the point where we've, slowed down showing a little bit, and put a little more of a focus on selling bulls. Annual bull sale in March. So we put, a shift on that. Obviously, still show today, and try to be, as competitive as we absolutely can, but we just don't show as many of them, as we used to. But obviously, through that now, my dad is obviously back at the farm full time. I'm involved here now with my wife, and yeah, that's a bit of a background, I guess, of kind of the operation. We're obviously down here by Bean Fate, which is in the southeast corner of Saskatchewan.
Yeah, for sure, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, like I kind of my transition from Ontario to out here, I think the bull sale thing for sure adds a whole nother thing to it because it's that much more preparation too, right? Like I feel in Ontario, it's show cattle, show cattle, show cattle, and that's all a lot of people focus on because there isn't really that as much of a bull market there as here, right? And then I think coming out here,
Exactly.
I feel like people spend equal if not more time on the bull sale side of things because really that's the bread and butter for a lot of purebred guys, right? Is selling bulls to those commercial buyers and purebred buyers as well, but that's where a lot of people
Exactly.
make kind of their income for the whole year for sure.
For
And
sure.
Maddie, if you
Yeah.
don't mind touching on too, just kind of your family's operation and how that kind of all came to be.
Yeah, so I grew up as the sixth generation on my family's ranch, Compass Ranch, just west of Calgary. They started with purebred Red Angus, and when I was growing up, it was mostly commercial cattle, and my sisters and I started showing a bit and got back into the purebred Angus. So that's kind of that. And then through the whole cattle show thing, I actually was at a Hereford show helping some Hereford breeders and in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, and bumped into Riley, and that's kind of how that all started.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
This is a kind of a question for both of you. What do you think has changed the most in your cow herds from, let's say, when you were 15 years old to now, in terms of style and kind of?
Yeah, I would say, especially probably in the Semitol cattle, Mitch, I'm just thinking from when I was, young to looking today. I mean, obviously the frame size has obviously changed, um, a bit to a point. Uh, but I think today there's, the biggest change to me probably is there's just a lot more kind of, body and volume in these cattle, than there was in the 90s. I think the udders, probably across all breeds have gotten, very nice now. But, back, I remember as a kid, there's more cattle that probably were a little coarser made probably and just not maybe as refined and as feminine. And I think, for the most part, all breeds have done a very nice job of keeping the bulls masculine enough, and they got to have some power and some performance. But, the females across all breeds on the top end of this deal now are very feminine and, angular and good uddered. And, so that's probably some of the biggest change I've seen, in kind of what we've done here.
I think Regina Supreme really speaks to that too, right? Seeing, you got
Exactly.
10, most of the time, 10 pairs out there, and it's most of the time there's, I would say, probably 75% of the breeds are represented, right? And I think that's really cool to see
Exactly.
that there's really good quality through all those breeds, right?
Exactly. I would say probably too as the cattle today have probably become, as a whole, um, just a little probably easier doing type of cattle. They've, a lot of breeders and people have focused on, making cattle that, can convert and kind of thrive and not to maybe, back then, I guess they obviously did just fine too, but, them cattle were a little bit bigger and they're a little bit shallower and, typically those cattle take a little more feed in order to get them to rebreed and do what they're supposed to do. Or I think today we've probably, for lack of a better word, we've just made them a little more convenient. And I think a big part of that's due to, again, the commercial bull trade. I mean, most of these guys that are buying the bulls, run those cows in large groups. They don't really, do any extra pampering or love for them. They kind of got to, do it on their own. So that is dictated, to us purebred breeders, kind of what we have to do in order to align, with their goals and what they have in mind.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this question rolls really well into that. What would you say the most important trait is, or what these commercial guys are looking for the most when they come to Wheatland's bull sale?
I think a big part of it, Mitch, we've had, a lot of repeat customers over the years and every year, try to draw some new folks in and I think a big reason is for us, we've been a very closed purebred cow herd. On the female side, up until this point, we've hardly marketed any females on the top end. We've always kept them to breed and put into the herd. We've sold, like that Supreme cow last year, we'd sold part of her obviously to G2, and we've sold a couple other females, a couple parts to some Americans, and done a few things on that side of it. But and my mom and dad too, is always kind of their philosophy, and we built this, that it wanted a very, very good cow herd, and to me, is somebody that's if I was a commercial bull producer and I open a catalog and I can flip through 60, 70, 80, 100, 200 bulls, whatever the number is, and when you look through them pedigrees and you can see, your own prefix, and a high percentage of those bulls are mothered by cows and grandmothers that were bred and raised here, that becomes appealing to me, just from the standpoint of, they're, a breeding program. They're using their own genetics. It's obviously working, and they're building upon that, where, you can open some catalogs and there's a little bit of everything in there, and not to say there's nothing wrong with that, but to me, we've always just been a little more steered towards, trying to make a program, putting your own prefix in front of it, and breeding them, and raising them. Another big part, obviously, it's like anything. If you're buying a truck or a tractor or whatever, you want to go somewhere where you get service, where you get looked after and treated properly. And I would like to think that our service and customer relations in the last number of years have been very well, and a lot of our customers have become very close with us, and talked to them quite a bit throughout the year, and there's a lot of good people that we get to work with.
Yeah, for sure. And I think actually everybody on the podcast so far has said, like, it's a people business, right? And I think
Oh, for sure. Yep.
building those relations with, whether it's a commercial guy who has 100 cows, or a purebred guy who's selling cows for 100 grand, like, I think
Yep.
it's all very important to keep those relationships with everybody. I guess I'll preface this by saying, like, I think you guys do an amazing job with the catalog, and I think in terms of bull pictures, I think it'd probably be some of the best that I see in any catalog. Maddy, just touch on how important it is, maybe just to take that extra time that you guys do to, get them clipped up and get them looking the part for the picture pen.
Yeah, I guess we kind of take picturing here pretty seriously, just with, I guess, myself kind of being the in-house photographer. We can take a little bit extra time and care towards it. I think, yeah, pictures are, when you are scrolling on Facebook or when you open a catalog, that's like your first impression, so you want it to look good. So yeah, we spend the extra time getting them cleaned up and getting them clipped the way we want them, and getting that good picture. And if they're not acting good that day, we, I guess, get the ability to, if we need to, run them back the next day. And I think that's just the benefits of Riley having his personal photographer.
I always laugh.
Lucky
We
Riley.
get custom help to. I always laugh. We get some extra help to come in when we clip and torch the first time, and some of these guys are used to doing a pile a day, 50, 60, 70 a day, and they text me, say, so how many we figure on doing a day? And I'm like, probably 15 to 20.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it shows, right?
Yeah, they got to look like something when we're done, take pride in it. And there's lots of people that do a very nice job for sure too. And it's like all of us that do this. It's our livelihood. So they got to get presented right. They need to be cleaned up, clipped properly. The tag, any manure and tag needs to be pulled. And all those little details is always, to me, what, can separate yourself from a few of the others at the end, if you're willing to. And it does take a little more time, but hopefully, like I say, from doing some of that you get a little bit of reward out of it.
Oh, 100%. And Sam and I talk about this quite often with the show cattle thing, is you spend so much time and so much money before the show, or in this case, the bull sale, right? And, people say, oh, we just gotta get these pictures done. You gotta get these pictures done. But,
Yeah.
if you think of how much time and money you've spent up until the shoot before they get pictured and clipped, like, if you just spend another hour, that's like pennies compared to what you've spent, for
Exactly.
breeding and feed and housing and all that, right? Like, I think that's definitely
I
something
think
that
it was I can't remember which bull that was. A couple years ago, Maddy, our leadoff bull. I can't remember for sure which bull it was, but I think we maybe pictured him twice.
Is next century.
Next Century, a Red Bull we'd sold a couple years ago, and and I might be a little bit off, but I'm pretty sure Maddy had about 400 and some pictures of them.
Yeah, and we re-videoed him like 6 times just to get the perfect shots.
Yeah, the perfect shot.
And then the problem is when you come inside at night and sit down with Maddy and we're trying to pick which picture we like the best, and she's flipping through them, and there's about 80 of them that look the exact same.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
I,
that's
I
great.
tell Riley to leave that part to me, but when it's his own pictures, he likes to sit over my shoulder and tell me what I should be doing.
Exactly. Riley, maybe just touch on the timeline that those bulls kind of would go through from kind of grass to sale time.
Yeah. So most times, wrap up breeding, we'll usually do our last group of implants, the end of May, start of June. Usually this kind of our area where we are, that's kind of the timeline when we go to grass is that end of May, start of June. So bull calves would all get sent to grass. Kind of fortunate we got a couple pieces of land that are a little bigger chunks that we can keep all those bull calves and run them together. So red, blacks, Angus, they all go together. Um, yeah, they will actually go to some native grass right off the start early in the spring. And then about, I'm going to say, start of July, we'll move them to another chunk of grass that's some seeded tame grass. Then they will spend the duration of the summer there, and we'll typically wean them. Like this year, we would have weaned those bulls kind of the first 10 days of September, um, give them their pre weaning shots on the cow. Turn them back out on the cow for about 7 to 10 days to let that vaccine do what it needs to do. We will put out creep feed at that time when we do give the pre weaning vaccines. Then, like I say, 10 days later, roughly, we wean them, weigh them. We do use therapies on those bulls at weaning time. Then they'll get put into kind of a big lot pen just for kind of until the balling's done, just so they're not pacing around in a super big pen, just to kind of keep them a little bit confined so we can keep an eye on them and get them on started on the feet and make sure everybody's healthy. And then as time goes from there, now they're obviously we're feeding them, but they're out on a big chunk of grass where they get exercise and they like, now these cooler evenings, they're out there bucking and kicking and playing around with each other. So as we get closer to, sale time here and through the winter, we'll sort them down, kind of black bulls, red bulls, Angus bulls. We have some 18-month-old fall embryo transfer bulls that'll also be in the sale. So they'll kind of get sorted down so it's easier to look at. And as far as their ration, I mean, yeah, they're eating brown oats and some corn with a supplement, Rumensin pellet mineral package, some chopped hay, and also put some hay in feeders so they can kind of pick and choose on what type they like. But we fed a lot of oats to our bulls and a long time, probably as long as I can remember. The biggest chunk of their ration would be oats and. Yeah, so that's kind of a bit of the run through, I guess, on how we develop them and what happens from
Yeah, for
grass
sure.
till
No,
weaning time.
yeah, it's always interesting for sure hearing everyone's different operations and different ways. And I think I always think about that. If you could just take a little piece of everyone's and kind of put it all together and make
Put
it
it
your own,
together,
it just
yeah.
all works good, right? What I guess for Riley, other than picking mature cows that aren't halter broke to Sean, what would you guys kind of look for when you're looking through the cows to kind of maybe pick one out to show?
Yeah, it especially on these pairs, we're getting another one ready here to take next week that I'm very excited about, and it's kind of funny. She went to grass actually in the spring, and she looked very nice when she left the yard this spring. And actually, it's kind of a rainy afternoon. I was out checking cows and those bull calf pairs actually, and I'd seen her, and right away I texted Maddy and said, I think there's one out here that we need to bring home again, and she'd be a 3-year-old. But especially on these pairs, obviously the udders, I mean, got to be darn close to perfection, I think. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is, especially if you get out of your own breed. You get into an interbreed deal, and the udder has to be right, teats and levelness. And so that's a big part of it, especially when we're looking at these pairs. I mean, obviously a cow that's, got some look and presence to her and some body and, just kind of that image of and I think kind of the neat part is to me anyway, good cow that does a good job in our operation on the purebred side of it is the same cow that I would like to take to town and promote. You know, it's not really two different types of cattle. Um, I think that we've always kind of tried to merge the two together, and to anyone that says, you know, a cow that has some refinement and femininity and quality can't raise a big stout bull calf, I would, you know, beg to differ.
Yeah. Well, and you have the product to show it too.
Yeah, exactly, and especially on these pairs too. I've always kind of been that way when I've judged too, but I do put, you know, a big amount of emphasis on the calf. I mean, you know, I think there should be a big, powerful calf standing there at her side. Especially, you know, we're in a breed of cattle that's, you know, known for performance with these Simmental cattle. So, you know, yes, we all like to look at a really nice cow, but to me, she's got to have something standing there in front of her that puts it together, and they kind of, you know, go as an item together. So I think it is important, you know, for our sake anyway, when we're picking one out, you know, I want a big stout calf standing at her side.
For sure. Maddie, I guess we'll start with you. What would be your first memory of going to Regina?
So actually my first memory, or I guess year, showing there would have been in 2018. We had a Black Angus cow calf pair. She would have won Old Fall Classic that year, and she made top 5 at Farm Fair and top 10 in Regina. Her name was Riverstone Georgina 9C. So that was kind of my first big memory of exhibition, was showing her there and getting to be top 10. That was a pretty cool experience for the first time.
Yeah, totally. Especially for your first time going, that's a pretty good way to round that off for sure. And Riley, what about you? I guess you'd be a little bit closer and probably been there a little earlier in time.
Yeah, I was trying to think back in the days, Mitch. I actually can't remember which, you know, was my first year. This one thing I can remember is, you know, back when we took them big strings, my mom and dad and the crew would always go up, you know, obviously at the start of the week, and my brother and I were just, you know, let's say around grade 5 and 6, and my mom would always kind of make us go to school Monday, Tuesday at the start of the week, and then my grandma, my mom's mom, actually would always bring us up Tuesday after school. Simmentals would show Wednesday, and so yeah, we've had a lot of, you know, a lot of memories. You know, over the years, exhibition's always kind of been a special one to us. And last night, actually, with my dad, I was just kind of going through some over the years, some of the, you know, success that we'd had along the way, and it was pretty cool. And you ask yourself, well, what year was that, and who was judging that, and it's funny actually as you go through it, a couple of the same cows and bulls start to really come back in those pedigrees, and yeah, it's just interesting to see over time. Sometimes you maybe don't really realize it at the present, but when you take the time to sit down and kind of dig back through it, you start to see a few things that show up that, you know, you didn't notice off the start. But yeah, I actually don't really remember my very first exhibition, but yeah, I remember Cody and I would just be pumped up to get up there, and we were just young enough yet. My dad, at that time, I did all the clipping prior. Cody and I were obviously just little shysters, and my mom and dad are pretty intense people. My dad is very, very likes things done his, you know, proper way, and about details, and it has to look right. So, you know, it was and my mom was, you know, kind of the same way. She was they would tell you, you know, kind of what they thought. There was never just a whole lot of you know, pat on the backs type deal. It was a little more of maybe what we could improve on or what we didn't do good enough. But maybe at the time you seemed like it was, you know, a little bit hard, but as you look back on it now, glad I was, you know, brought up the way I was, and it doesn't hurt to have thick skin once in a while.
Oh, for sure, for sure. What would be the first big win you kind of remember from being there?
Um, this kind of be a or a two-part answer, I guess, Mitch. So in 2006, they had the World Simmental Congress. It was held at Calgary, kind of in conjunction there was Stampede, and we had a 2-year-old bull and a 2-year-old pair that we were getting ready to take to that. And like I say, Cody and I weren't very old at the time. Maybe I'm gonna say I was maybe around 10. Cody would have been, you know, kind of 8, 9-ish in that area. So I mean, we were young, and I remember, you know, that World Congress was in July, and my mom and dad really wanted to go, but then at the same time, they weren't quite sure. They had really obviously liked the cattle, but wondered, are they quite good enough to go all the way out there? Calgary's a long way. It's haying season, so many things going on. Loaded them up, and it was actually, never forget, Nate Marin had actually come out with us to help, and we'd got out there. And I remember the morning of the show, I was walking around actually just with my mom, and we were just kind of outside the show ring, and there was this trailer sitting in the center of the ring, and it was a aluminum Kiefer built trailer, and it said 2006 World Champion Simmental Bull on it. And I was just young, joking around at the time. I didn't really know exactly what was going on. And I just kind of said jokingly to her, I said, "Well, wouldn't it be cool if we won that?" And she kind of laughed, and yeah, that would be cool. I guess it was later that day. My mom actually showed the bull. His name was Wheatland Hummer 468P. We would have showed him as a calf in Regina. He would have been reserve champion as a calf, and didn't show him as a yearling, and then brought him back out as a two. And he actually, Barry Labatt and a fellow by the name of Blaine Harland judged that World Simmental show that year, and he would have been world champion bull. Uh, cool part was the 2-year-old pair that we had. Her number was 454P. She was a Teddy 131L daughter, which was kind of a bull that started things for us. And uh, that cow's mother was 902J, and the bull's mother was 902J. So both them champions were mothered by the same cow. One
Oh,
was
that's
her,
cool.
yeah, the 468P, the bull was her direct natural calf, and the cow was a ET calf. But um, anyway, so yeah, that was pretty cool for mom and dad. I think that was kind of probably where things really started to kind of elevate for them, when they really started to push forward. Would have been later that fall when we went to Regina. Um, Took Hummer, the 468P bull there. He would have been champion bull in the Simmental show. Um, and then he would have went on to be supreme champion bull that year in Regina in 06. So that was obviously very cool for my mom and dad at the time. And I think, don't quote me, but I'm very positive he still remains today the only Simmental bull to win the supreme in
Oh,
Regina.
wow. Oh, that's awesome.
So,
Wow.
and yeah, so being that they were out of the same cow was pretty cool.
Totally, yeah, for sure. And I would imagine, I could be wrong, but I think this is probably the same for both of you. But the most memorable win you guys would have in Regina.
I guess, yeah, last year was pretty memorable for both of us, I guess. With that pair, I still, when we talked to Riley about showing these pairs, I still look back when that cow calved. We went out that morning, and here's this little black bull calf standing in the pen. He looked like a little black bear. And we just kind of looked at each other and had a smile on our faces. We thought he was going to be pretty cool. And yeah, as that pair kept progressing, I thought they definitely looked the part. And yeah, we had some success at exhibition with them. And yeah, that was my most memorable.
Yeah, I would probably say the same for two, Mitch. Those back to the Congress and that Supreme was pretty cool. At that time for us, we were just first getting going. Um, but yeah, last year was definitely pretty cool. Same thing. Yeah, just we'd kind of picked that cow out early on. She just always was so cool to look at, and had a big stout bull calf on her. And like I say, she had never had a halter on her. Had some ups and downs, obviously, kind of getting her broke, but for the most part, it was pretty good. And yeah, took a few bumps and bruises along the way, but she all come out kind of the way that we hoped in the end. And I, one thing I would say on that Supreme thing, I mean, the first time when mom and dad had won it, I wasn't, very old, and didn't obviously at that time didn't really understand everything. But there is so many, anybody that tells you there isn't a big percentage of luck involved in those types of deals is lying to you. I mean,
Oh, 100%. Yeah, for
it
sure.
so many things just have to line up. I'll never forget last year. I was, as we kind of would have been mid afternoon there on Supreme Day in Regina. That calf had honestly sucked that cow awesome twice a day and never had any battles at all. Saturday afternoon before the Supreme, he decided he just wasn't going to suck anymore. So of course I've been around me enough. I can get kind of pacing and a little high strung, and he just wasn't gonna suck. So we just kind of had to roll with it. It was what it was, and never forget thereafter, kind of when they have that little supreme party and you put them champions in the pens. We put him in a square pen, cracked his halter off, and he went right to sucking her.
There you go. Oh, nothing but timing, eh? Just perfect timing
right.
for that. What I guess what do you guys kind of the feeling of like bringing another pair out and the pressure? Do you guys ever feel any pressure on yourselves to kind of, after winning that Supreme last year, and do you bring another one out, or do you kind of maybe just touch on that?
Yeah, definitely some pressure, I guess. We're Maddie and I and my parents, we're all kind of wired the same way. We're just gonna do what we can do. We're gonna, yeah. I mean, we're very proud of them. Anybody, in any breed that's had some success, there's always a little bit of a target, and that's not just in cows. I mean, that's just in life in general. But we'll, yeah, like I say, we'll keep plugging away and do everything that we can do, and at the end of the day, if it plays out in our favor, that's awesome, and if not, that's just showing cows. But yeah, we'll do everything we
sure.
can and show
Yeah,
up.
and I
see
think
what
the
we can
luck
do.
thing too, right? Especially in that Supreme deal. And I think especially, one thing I really commend Farm Fair for is releasing that ballot after so you can kind of see, and I think even
Mhm.
just people judging having that thing in their head being like, okay, like, I kind of got to do this honestly. You have some accountability
places,
after
yeah.
for sure. And I think that would be, and I don't obviously anyone standing in that ring, and if you get picked top 10 or top 5, I think it's obviously a very proud moment, but it always just plays in your mind, right? Oh, like I wonder like where I was, or I think
Yeah,
especially for Regina, it's obviously if you get the privilege of winning, it's like it doesn't matter, but if you're in there, it'd always be nice to know, right? Kind of where, and if someone
yeah,
kind of
exactly. Yeah,
did you a favor or
there's a long
didn't,
ways
right?
between second and 10th. You'd be kind of curious to where you ended up.
Oh, 100% for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. There's a lot of. I remember just standing out there last year, and yeah, there's some nerves for sure, and a lot kind of running through your mind.
Yeah. Oh, I even remember watching and think like I know they pull you in kind of order of breed, but I remember being like, they're last in, like not good, because they net like just it starts playing in your mind, right? Oh, they're not gonna put whoever wins, they're not gonna put in first, and
Well,
they're not
I
gonna put them
remember
in
last
last,
year
and
they had 8 pulled out, and there was still 3 really nice pairs,
From exhibition.
exhibition, 3 breed champion pairs that were very nice, still standing off on the side. And I'm thinking to myself, we're standing here darn near at the end of the line.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, pretty sure my heart was about pumping out of my chest.
100% for sure. What would be some goals that you guys both have kind of for Wheatland in the next, let's say, 10 or 15 years?
I think Mitch is kind of keep, doing what we're doing. We'll still continue to, show a bit for sure. I think it's important to, put your name and face out in front and, exhibit some cattle and show people what you're up to. But still, our big, primary focus will be continuing on the cow herd and selling some more bulls. And, this will be our 22nd sale this spring. Our very first sale, we actually had it with some Hereford folks, and we'd sold a dozen Simmental bulls, in that sale. So, about 21 years later, we're, at 100 bulls this year. So there's been a lot of expansion and growth along the way. It's been, rewarding
For sure.
to us. Um, and yeah, that's just kind of where we've kind of decided to dedicate a little more of our time on that end of it, and we'll continue to push forward, with that. And my mom and dad are still very involved, and obviously Maddie and I, and just like most operations, the biggest problem right now is finding help. For the
For
most
sure.
part, is the biggest challenge as continue to do some expansion. But yeah, I don't really foresee any big changes. We just
For
kind
sure.
of keep breeding and raising the type that we like.
Yeah, for sure. What would do you guys each have a role model and how they've kind of impacted you through your journey so far?
I guess I probably would have two that come to the top of my mind, and the first one would be my dad. Um, I guess growing up, there was just myself and my two sisters, so we kind of had to be the girls and the boys of the family. For dad, he said we were his best three hired hands. He didn't want any boys, so I always looked up to him and his work ethic, and I guess just how he raised myself and my sisters. And then I guess the second one, as I got older, um, I look up quite a bit to Riley and just how he conducts himself. And geez, I'm getting emotional. And yeah, I think we've built a pretty good partnership. And yeah, he's just my best friend and someone I look up to every day.
For sure. And what about you, Riley?
And we heard it talk. I would say, yeah, my mom and dad definitely have taught me an awful lot over the years, and still today we bounce a lot of ideas off each other, and been through a lot together, highs and lows. They've put a lot of faith in me now as I've started to take more responsibility in what happens, and thank them for that. Maddy for sure would be another one. Again, best friend, awesome wife. I think the neat part with Maddy and I is, I don't know if it's good or bad. We'll see if on down the line here if we have some kids, but we are both very wired and very competitive. So I'm not sure if we'll both be able to go to the show or one of us will have to stay home. But yeah, we like things kind of done the same way, and we're kind of neat freaks, maybe one. Yeah, we just kind of like
Meticulous.
Meticulous is the word I'm looking for.
For sure.
A couple other people I can think of too. I went south for 4 years. Was on a livestock judging team. Had some success. Enjoyed my time. School was awesome. The people you meet. Somebody I really looked up to in those years going through that was a fellow by the name of Lance Leachman. He's had a lot of success and has judged a lot of shows, and a very, very smart, intelligent person who married an awesome gal there, Sherry. Another one while I was going to school too, that they're honestly kind of like my second parents when I was down there, but I was at Kansas State doing my last 2 years. Would have been Scott Shockey and his wife Candy. Did a lot for both my brother and I, Cody, and they've become great family friends. They come up to the wedding there last summer there in Alberta, and so yeah, just been super good people. Another super close friend I've got that we bounce ideas off each other all the time, and he's got an awesome eye for cattle, and we own some cattle with him on the Angus side of Shane Mitchelson. Been a family friend forever, and I respect his opinion of cattle, and yeah, he's always been there for us along the way, and yeah, I mean, there's a ton of good people, but those would be a handful of the few that I think have had some impact on our lives.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. This is a new kind of segment I'm starting so that everyone can kind of get to know me too. It's called The Host Gets Hosted. So if you guys had a question for me, I'd be more than happy to do my best to answer.
I had a couple, Mitch. The first one was I was going to ask, what kind of made you bring the podcast, or you and Sam, what kind of brought it to life, or where did that idea or kind of come from? Or
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing was, I think there's so many young people, like whatever age you would call young, that are doing a lot of cool things, and there wasn't really a platform for them to share that, and I think like one that sticks out for me was Luke last week. I think a young guy that was doing an awesome job, and we're good friends, and I had a guy message me today, and he's, dude, like it gives me hope, because I was where Luke was, let's say 5 years ago, and now that just gives me that extra little drive to want to be like Luke one day, and I think that's kind of what it's all about. And I think you guys know I love talking to people and kind of catching up and meeting new people and socializing a bit. So I think it just kind of played hand in hand, and just add one more thing to the list of stuff to do. So
yeah, and I always think it's kind of interesting to see where people's beginnings were. sometimes you don't, maybe you kind of have an idea, but then you actually sit down and talk to them, or if you listen to a podcast, it was totally different maybe than what you thought. And a lot of people, weren't born into, big fancy operations, or definitely wasn't an abundance of money. It was, a lot more so kind of some passion involved, and, some dreams and goals of kind of where you could get. And I mean, like anything, there's going to be some bumps and bruises along the way, but you just kind of got to keep going. And if you do hit some bumps and bruises, you can't stop. You just kind of got to try to charge on and keep
Yeah,
going.
100%. And I think just like connecting people and kind of, seeing what people are up to. And I think, like you said, just kind of, broadening everyone's view. And, if somebody learns something kind of at one point in time in every podcast, it's something they didn't know before. So it's, yeah.
Exactly. Another question I had: what's your favorite clipper blades to use on like the smaller
Oh,
clippers?
sharp ones. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, good answer.
I find sometimes, like, I guess for a while there, I was on like the blue ribbons with the ceramic tops, because kind of when Sam's truck got stolen, I had all my clippers and everything in there. So then when insurance gave me some money, I just went and bought a whole box of them. So, but I don't know. I'm out of them now, and I kind of migrated back to the older blue ribbons, like with the steel top on them. But I don't know. I still think every now and then you open a box or a package or whatever, and you put them on and you go to clip something, and you're like, are these actually brand new? Like, it doesn't feel like they're even cutting anything. And then sometimes you get a set and you clip, I don't know, way more than you should, and they stay sharp. So whether
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
just luck or I don't know. But as long as they're sharp, I'm good with pretty well anything.
As long as you're cutting and not pushing.
Let's do some rapid fire questions here to round it off, guys. Riley, do you have any show day superstitions? And if so, what is it?
Can I answer this one for you?
This Maddie's.
Show day superstition is pacing a million steps around the barn until we walk into the show ring.
I've experienced
Yeah, I have a
that one
tendency
firsthand.
to. I always tell Maddie too at home, like, we're just starting to do some clipping here for Agribition next week, and I like clipping at home. Shouldn't say I like it when they stand, but enjoy doing it at home. But I get to a show, and I'm not sure what it is, but my nerves kind of take over, and I'm okay a day or two before, but just the day of, I just kind of like to. Obviously, Mitch, you've helped us, but it's kind of like to stand back and observe a little bit and see how things are coming together. But at home, I like doing it, but yeah, when I get there, I just leave it to somebody else.
For sure. Home or favorite homemade meal, Maddie?
I like a good steak on the smoker. That's my favorite. Medium
There you
rare.
go. I guess you guys could both answer this one too. Least favorite job around the ranch?
Shoveling oats is not real fun.
Shoveling
I could
oats
second that
or
one.
cleaning the calving pens out.
Fair enough.
Yeah, shoveling oats with dust and
Dust and hot,
yeah.
we got to clean some bins tomorrow, and I was just like, if you guys could wait till Friday when we're gone, that would be awesome.
You should tell them. I think the weather's a little better Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What last one, I guess you guys can both answer this one too. Favorite hole in the wall dinner spot that you guys have found kind of in your travels?
Maddie was waiting to answer this one.
Well, I guess it's not really in our travels, but in Estevan, there's actually a pretty good sushi place called Gino's, which
In Estevan,
middle of
of all places.
Saskatchewan. Yeah, I was just gonna say you'd never think to find a good sushi place in Estevan, but if
There
you're
you go.
driving
Well,
through, go to Gino's.
yeah, for sure. I love sushi. It's like my favorite food. Well, thanks for coming on, guys. I really appreciate it. It was great to catch up, and we'll get to see you here, I guess, the end of this week in Regina.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate the opportunity. Both, Maddie and I are glad to be on, and we'll see you and Sam there next week, and appreciate the opportunity for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Anytime, guys. Thanks, everybody, once again for tuning in to episode 5 of the Next Gen Cattle Podcast. Thanks to Maddy and Riley for coming on. It was great to catch up and great to kind of hear their story from day one and kind of what they've all been through in the last little while, and kind of some advice that they would have for anyone and everybody. So yeah, we'll see you guys here this week in Regina, and we're excited to catch up with y'all. We'll see you soon.